I've seen many people falter when God doesn't meet their expectations. Well, today on Daily Renewal, I want to talk to you about what to be careful of when Jesus doesn't meet your expectations. Hello everybody, this is Pastor Lyle and welcome to Daily Renewal. If you're new to our channel, I just want to remind you to consider subscribing to our channel below and hitting that like button. That helps us get the videos out to more people. That will also give you access to over 100 different videos about various Christian topics that are designed to help you in your Christian walk. Well, today I want to talk to you about what to be careful of when God misses our expectations. You know, many times we find ourselves maybe praying about certain things, and there's times where you might find yourself disappointed. And in this day and age especially, I see many people, and there's even a warning in the last days that there will be a falling away. And I really believe that a lot of the reason why there is a falling away is because there's people who feel like God has let them down in one way or another. Now, I'm here to tell you right now, He'll bring you to a good end. He has a plan for your life. But if we have some short-term things that don't work out in our way, we have to trust that God knows what He's doing. So I want to start off today by giving you a little bit of background about what it would have been like to be one of Jesus' disciples. These men were all people that were either applying their father's trade by being fishermen. One of them was recorded as being a tax collector. They were doing things that really were considered to being not really high on the social ladder in Jewish culture. As a young boy, if you were a success, what that meant is that at a certain age, you'd go submit yourself to a rabbi and they would make you recite the Torah. For those that are new, that was, basically they had memorized most of what we know as the Old Testament. You'd go up to a rabbi, a Sadducee or a Pharisee, for example. They would ask you questions about the Torah, and if you could answer the questions to satisfy them, what they would do is they would say, you know what? I want you to come and follow me. I want to train you up so that you can do what I do. And you would be considered somebody that was very important in Jewish culture. But if you came to a rabbi and they didn't think you were good enough, then you had to go back and begin to apply your father's trade. That's why it was so important we understand that at the beginning of the Gospels, it was a big deal for Jesus, one who was called a rabbi, to approach some of these people who are now men who had been rejected by other rabbis. When he said, follow me, when they looked at him, many of them, I'm sure, looked at this and thought, wow, I get another opportunity to do this. And the fact that Jesus looked at them and asked them to follow, it was like a vote of confidence saying, you know what? I think you can do what I do. And so there is where we set off the whole journey that many of them partook in, where they left their father's trade and they began to follow Jesus. Now, as you read through the New Testament, you'll find out that this was an amazing adventure. And many times, you see that there was thousands of people at times that were following Jesus. And you have to remember that it was pointed out very early that there was a good indication that Jesus might not just be a rabbi, but he might be the rabbi, the Messiah. And being the Messiah, this was the long-awaited Messiah that the Jews were looking that was going to come. And the idea behind the Messiah is many believed that the Messiah was going to set up shop in Jerusalem, and all that was wrong in the world was going to be made right, because God was going to set up the Messiah on the throne, and all other kings would bow to him, and anybody that was close to the Messiah, any of his right-hand men, they were all going to rule and reign in this world for eternity. There was some preconceived ideas of what was going to happen when the Messiah came. So now we need to imagine what this would be like being one of the disciples, as things are unfolding and you realize that you are with Jesus, the one that was prophesied to be the king, the king of the Jews, the one that all men would bow to. Imagine what it would have been like to be one of his right-hand men. You know, there was times where people wouldn't, Jesus had so many people following him that people would actually go to the disciples, the one that were the closest, the original 12, and they would say, hey, I want to talk to you because you're close to Jesus. Imagine that would have felt like. You being one of the best of the best. You being one of the ones that was close to Jesus. He's feeding thousands of people and people are looking at you like you're really something. There's times where I'm sure they felt like, wow, look at me. I was nothing and now I'm something. There was so much promise to your life now. And so, they're looking at any time now, Jesus is going to come. He's going to sit on the throne and everybody's going to know. And then all of a sudden, the inevitable happens. Something that they weren't expecting. They were expecting their king to sit on a throne and take over. And what happens? They kill him. All of a sudden, Jesus is in the place where he's hanging on a cross before Pontius Pilate, and he's facing crucifixion. And these 12 men that were following closely to him, Peter being one of them, the bold one, the one that he said he would never forsake Jesus, finds himself before a young girl and he denies Jesus 3 times in one night. And he finds himself on the outside looking in. And I can't even imagine what it would have been like where all your hopes and dreams are shattered. They've been traveling with him for 3 years with all this promise, and Jesus is led to the cross. He's beaten. He's led to the cross to die on the cross, and he dies on the cross. And then, interestingly enough, there's some things that happen that all of a sudden the story seems to get bright again to a degree. Jesus dies, and for 3 days, he's nowhere to be found, and all of a sudden, he resurrects. But the New Testament records that there was a couple times where the disciples actually saw him again. So they see him. But the tough part about this is there's some things in the story now that have dramatically changed. And this is where I want to pick up the story of what was happening with Peter. It was widely received that Peter would have had to have seen Jesus a couple times, or at least once, before this story takes place. And so we pick this story up in the book of John 21, and it says this. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and in this way he showed himself. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. And Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, we're going with you also. They went out and immediately got into the boat. And that night they caught nothing. But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Now this week we're going to spend some time looking into this story a little further. But I want to show you that one of the key things that I want to point out first of all is that it was a big deal for Peter to be fishing. And I'll tell you why. If we look back into Luke 22, for example, on the night that Peter betrayed Jesus, Jesus was very clear to him that not only was he going to betray him, but he gave him a mandate about what his life was about, what he wanted him to do with his life. And we pick this up in verse 31. He says, Simon, Simon, indeed Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith should not fail, and when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. So we see here, and again, we're going to talk more about this probably tomorrow. The whole thing that Jesus was trying to get into Peter is, I've got a plan for your life. In fact, Jesus said to him, I'm going to make you a fisher of men, not a fisherman. So if that was the case, why is it that we see here now where all of a sudden Peter has seen Jesus at least once. Peter has all of a sudden reverted back to this idea of going fishing. Now, some of you may not even like fishing. When I was a kid, I had some bad experiences fishing, and when my dad said, let's go fishing, I wasn't jumping at it. I'd have followed Jesus instead of went fishing. But we have to understand that what happened here, this wasn't somebody just saying, you know what, I'm just kind of bored, I'm kind of hungry, let's go out and catch a fish. That's not what was happening here. What was happening is Peter said, I'm going fishing. He got into a boat, and my first question is, where did he get the boat? This was a planned thing where he had to have a fishing boat that had nets all prepared. So did he go back and get his father's old boat? Did he reconnect? He's made a calculated decision before he got in the boat that he had to get a boat. So he had a boat, and then it says that they went all night and caught nothing. They had all their net ready to go, and the idea was, we're going to go back and do what we used to do. And I'm going to tell you why this is important. Peter was going through a time in his life where, did he believe Jesus was the Messiah? He probably did. There was some things that he went through, but the confusion on what that actually meant, I believe, threw him into a lot of turmoil. He'd seen Jesus, and in this point, we're going to read the story more tomorrow, but what happens is Jesus appears on shore, and Peter's excited to see him. He swims up to him, and they end up having breakfast together, and Jesus confronts him on some things. But the thing that Jesus confronts him on really has a lot to do with, why are you out fishing? In other words, why are you focusing on the things that you used to focus on the things that you used to think you were good at? In other words, focusing on your own strength. And why is this important? I'll tell you. Because when you believe that God has missed your expectations, one of the first things you need to be careful not to do is to revert back to things that used to bring you comfort, things that you used to rely upon your own strength. And that's often our tendency. There's things that come into our lives where we are going to be challenged. Can I trust who Jesus is? And if Jesus is who he says he is, can I trust that he loves me enough that he can bring me through, that he knows my life well enough that he can bring me through any situation? I've seen many people who have even forsaken the faith because God didn't meet their expectations. And I believe that Jesus will always, for somebody who's a believer in Jesus Christ, when you are struggling in your faith, I believe that Jesus will do with you just what he did with Peter. He'll do his best to show, you know what? I am here for you. But that doesn't mean he's going to grant all of your requests. And that's because a lot of our requests aren't really the best for our situation. We have to learn to trust God. As I just mentioned, I've met people that say, you know what? I can't serve a God who does this or allows this to happen. That's really kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Do you think God is in heaven looking at you? And when you say, well, if God is like this, then I'm not going to serve him. I can't believe in a God like that. Do you think God is up in heaven looking down at you going, wow, if he can't believe in me, I guess I'm not real? See, whether we believe in Jesus or not, that doesn't change the fact that he's God. And so for us, just because we don't understand something, that doesn't mean that we should be making decisions that are going to have eternal consequences. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't change the fact that God is God. So we have one option, and that is to find out, okay, Lord, maybe the answer is I need to get closer to you to find out how I can walk in this properly so that I can see that my expectations will change and I can fulfill what you've called me to do. And if we go down to verse 19, Jesus sums it up, and we'll cover this more tomorrow. He sums it up by saying at the end of verse 19 to Peter, follow me. We have to understand that the key to getting through all the confusion, all the missed expectations, when you don't understand God, that's the time when you need to get closer to Jesus and follow him. Might not make sense right now, but that's the key to all of this, The Bible says the just shall live by faith in multiple portions of Scripture. And you know what? There's times where that's going to be hard to do. But if you really do believe that Jesus is who he says he is, he's God manifest in the flesh, he is the Messiah, he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. If you believe that, then you also must trust that he can get you through any situation, and it's his desire to do that. Well, I hope you got something out of that today. If you did, I just want to encourage you again to hit that like button and consider becoming a subscriber to our channel. Looking forward to continuing this tomorrow. Having said that, God bless you and have a great day.